Hey everybody. Well, today we're going to do something kind of off the wall, which is not something necessarily different than what you see on this channel anyway. But what this is here is these are parts of a character that was in a pinball machine from 1990. It was called Funhouse. I love pinball machines and pinball. I was quite the pinball wizard in my day, actually. But one of my favorite pinball games was Funhouse. Now, the main reason that that game was so fun is because it had this character named Rudy, and this is actually Rudy's face. So it was just the head of Rudy. This is what his face looked like, and I'll have to paint this because this is just the outer shell of it. So this is the back, front of his head. This is the back of his head, and this piece, unfortunately, is super, super thin. I don't know why this was made the way it was. This is vacuum formed styrene. I don't know if that's what the original Rudy head was made of, but these two pieces, let me see if I can get a hold of them, are going to go together. You can see his ear right there. So these are going to go together like this. And then this is what he looks like. Now, he kind of looked like one of those ventriloquist dummies. It's kind of what he looked like. And in the game, he was animated. He was fully animated. He would have these eyelids, which is what these are. And his eyelids would open and close. There's a mechanism on the inside, a very complicated mechanism that made him work, which I will not be able to replicate with this because all I have are just these parts to it. And I've seen videos on YouTube that show how his mechanism works, and it's really super complicated. Plus, there was a metal frame that was on the inside of his head, and I don't have that piece. I was going to buy it, but it's really expensive, and since I'm not really going to make this work anyway, it's kind of pointless to spend that much money on that. Here is his jaw. This was his lower jaw, and this is what it would look like. And he would talk. He would talk to you during the game, like if you were if it was your turn and it was taking you too long, he'd go, "Hey, Bunky, it's your turn," something like that. And then if you would hit the clock, there was this clock in the game, and if you got it to midnight, it would make Rudy fall asleep, and his mouth would hang open like this. And you could get the ball in there, and you could get multi-ball. That was the whole point of it. And so as it was getting closer to midnight, he would say things like, "I'm not happy with you now," or "Stay away from the clock." And he had some really neat little sayings. Sometimes if you hit the ball and his mouth was closed and you'd hit it right, you hit the ball right in his chin, he would go, "Ow, what did I ever do to you?" So he had a really neat personality. It was fun to play. Just because of Rudy, he was like the highlight of the game. Now here, I have the eyeballs. Now I couldn't get the ones that have the white of the eyes. I could only find these clear ones. They do have some white ones, but it had the wrong color irises. These are blue, and that's what Rudy looked like. So what I'm going to do is I'll have to mask off the front of this whole thing, and then I'm just going to paint it with some Tamiya. I'll just use some Tamiya matte white. So that's what I'll do. I'll just paint the inside of it. And then his eyes were in behind the eyelid, so they would be kind of back here like this. So I'm not sure how I'm going to fix all this stuff. I don't know how I'm going to put all this stuff in, because without the metal frame and without some of the things that went across here to suspend everything like this, these are his eyelids. You can see here where they were attached to the side, and there's nothing in here to really attach it to. So what I'm going to have to do is make some kind of foam board pieces and just kind of glue it in and just put this on. It'd be neat if I could make his eyelids open and close. I don't know if I can do something like that. I'll see if I can do anything to do that. And then the other thing is, how the heck am I going to get his eyes to kind of float out here? Because in the on the metal frame, they had these little pieces that kind of came out, and it would attach right here on Rudy's eyes. And you can see these little parts right here, and that's where his eyes would pivot side to side. So I'll just have to find some way of, I'll probably make a piece of foam board that comes down from the top of his head and just glue his eyeballs on there somehow. It's going to be pretty rinky-dink to put this together, but I just want his head. I don't really care about any mechanisms on it. So these parts, Rudy, like I said, that game was from 1990, and the game is long since retired. And trying to get any parts for this is really difficult, especially the Rudy parts, because they're so specialized. But I did find a company called Planetary Pinball. Planetary Pinball had all of these parts, and they must have the original molds or something for Rudy's head, because they can make these, and these are vacuum formed plastic. This front piece is really well done. I really like it. The back piece would have been fine, but like I mentioned, this is paper thin. I mean, this is way too fragile, and you can see it's much thicker up here, so I don't know why they didn't make it the thickness of this consistent. I mean, it's really flimsy, so, but you're not going to see the back of his head anyway. But also, these are not painted, so I'm going to have to paint these myself. I was looking on eBay just to get this piece alone, just for this piece from an actual game. It was painted and everything. Was $400 to $500 for this piece of plastic, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. So yeah, I wasn't going to pay that much for it. So thankfully, Planetary Pinball makes this piece, so that's really good. So what I'll do is I'll paint everything. So as you can see here, the colors don't match on this, and this was something I noticed with different Rudies. The mouth always seemed to be darker than the rest of him. Whoever painted the parts originally for the game. So I want to try to make these a little more consistent. So what I'll do is I'll just paint all of these parts with some Tamiya primer. And then once they're all primed, then I'll take some of this Tamiya matte flesh. And this is TS77. I'll just put matte flesh on here. And then that way all of his skin colors are all the same. And then paint the insides of these white. And then from there, I got to start painting some of the little details on Rudy's face. So he had dark brown eyebrows. It kind of went like this. It didn't cover the whole eyebrow. It was just kind of like a little kind of comma-shaped thing here. And same with this, going this way. He had two little lines that came from his sides of his eyes. The hairline, I'll have to paint this somehow. I'll have to look at pictures and try to paint it. I'm going to have to do it all by hand. It's the only way I'm going to be able to do it. On the back of his head, all he had was a hairline that came down to about here. It kind of curved back here. It's like a brown hairline. And then also he had some sideburns that went around here, that went around the front. So when I put that on, I'll have to paint some sideburns on. I guess I'll just have to have those holes in the side of his head, unfortunately. And also his nose and his cheeks had these little circles, like a red painted circle, like almost like clown makeup. So I'm going to use, well, I don't have it with me, but I have a stencil I can draw the circle on. And then I'll just hand paint the circle on here using some Tamiya red paint right here. And then I'll just use this dark brown paint for his eyebrows and hair. All right, well, let's see if I can get something going on this, and maybe hopefully he'll look pretty decent when I get it done. Okay, so now I got all the main spray painting done. So I went ahead and repainted this. Now everything matches. Here is the eyelash, or I'm sorry, the eyelids. Went ahead and painted the back, even though I don't think you'll see that. Wasn't sure how much of the mouth you're going to see either. I don't think you'll see the very back of it, though, so I left that. The eyes turned out really good. Just masked that off. Spray painted the inside. You can see it's all white in there. And they both turned out looking really good. Look at that. And I kind of like it because the clear is on the outside. Kind of makes the eyes look almost, I don't know, kind of gives it a different kind of look instead of just having the surface of it painted. Here's the back of his head now. I didn't paint the top because I'm going to hand paint all this with brown for his hair. And then, as I mentioned, the hairline comes down around here somewhere. I'll probably use a pencil to kind of draw that out, the outline of it, so I can kind of figure out, you know, where that's going to go. And then here's his face. That turned out really nice too. So yeah, it's cool to see this the way it, you know, it is. I'm so used to seeing it in just the pinball machine, you know, where you can't touch it or look at it really closely. So this is neat. All right, so now I got to start on the dark brown areas for his eyebrows and the red nose, the red cheeks, the red lip, the brown bangs or hair, and the red, let's see, the red lip down here. I got to repaint this red lip. All right, so hopefully that all turns out okay. Okay, so I've been working on this all day today. Man, but I got to say, these turned out really good, way better than I thought they were going to. So starting off with Rudy's face here, look at how good this looks. It looks exactly like what you saw in the pinball machine. I tried to do as close as I could to the original paint job because, you know, it seems like every Rudy that I saw online looked slightly different. And I think it's because maybe some of them were repaired. And so I mean, they all had kind of the basic same paint job. But this is what I was talking about with these kind of like a Nike swoosh kind of look for his eyebrows. And so I kind of penciled in the outline for it first so that, I could get a general idea of what they look like. That way I don't make a mistake with the paint. Better to do it with a pencil first. I used a stencil for these round circles on his nose and on his cheeks. So just drew a stencil and then hand painted the red in there. Hand painted the lip right there. And then same with all this hair. So I tried to follow kind of like what they did with the hairline up here. A little bit of the sideburns going on there. So that's what it looks like. And then let's see, here is the back part of his head. So this is kind of the hairline that I saw on the original Rudy, which is pretty cool. I mean, it looks pretty good. It's very basic. I mean, it was kind of a very basic kind of paint job. You didn't really get to see the back of his head much, because it was bumped up against some other stuff back here. So you never really got to see the back of his head too much. I think the only way you'd notice it is if you were working on the machine. So let me see if I can try to put these together. Not sure how I'm going to glue these together. You can kind of see how, let me move his mouth real quick. You can see how this kind of goes together right there. Tried to match up the hairline on the sideburns. And then let me do this side. Let me get this part. I had to blow dry the heck out of this to get this paint to dry. I don't know how many coats of the brown I had to do. So that's what it looks like there. So the bottom isn't even because it was, you got to remember this was on some kind of a play field for the pinball machine. And so obviously this is a little uneven. I'm not really sure how I'm going to have this sit on a desk with it being uneven like that. And plus this thing is going to stick out. Here's the jaw, repainted lip. And this is going to stick out a little bit from the bottom of Rudy's mouth here. You can kind of see how he looked right there. Hey, Bunky! If you haven't played this game, if you can find a Funhouse Pinball, you got to try it. It's such a fun game. Rudy is like the whole part. He makes it so fun. My friend, he's got a Funhouse game, and I'm so jealous. He bought a Funhouse Pinball. But, and I wouldn't mind getting one, but gosh, they take up a lot of room. And also, if it breaks down, I don't know anything about having to fix something like that. And trying to call somebody out to fix something like that would be really difficult. Or, really expensive, I'm sure. But this is looking really good. Okay, so now I got to figure out how all these pieces are going to go in here. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. I kind of think maybe for the mouth here, I might just glue that. I'm not going to make anything move. It would be kind of pointless to have it move because there's nothing on the inside. So it's possible I might just try to I might just end up cutting off all of these, this big long thing, because it's only on by this little piece right here. So I might just cut those off and just glue the mouth, the front of the chin in, and just kind of do it like that. But anyway, I'll see what I can come up with. I'll have to use foam board. I think I can kind of cut foam board and make some pieces in here to kind of suspend the eyelids and the eyes. All right, well, anyway, guess I'll get to work on it some more. All right, well, I decided to cave. I went ahead and caved and bought the metal frame that goes inside of Rudy's head. It became on sale on the Planetary Pinball website. It was just on sale all of a sudden. And then I had a coupon code, so I thought, well, what the heck, I can at least get it for a decent price. So you can kind of see how this whole thing is made specifically for Rudy. So the eyelids right here, they'll go into this hole and this hole. And I'm just going to put them in there to kind of show you. Fits into this part right here and this part like this. And then you can kind of see how the eyelids will move. They're meant to move like this. Of course, they had actuators on the inside. I think what I might do is attach a wire to this little piece right here. And then if I pull it from the bottom, hopefully I'll be able to make his eyes open and close, animate them a little bit. And then these little sections here, that's where the eyeballs go. So I kind of like the fact that since this is measured for Rudy, I don't have to sit here and try to figure out, because I was really thinking, having a hard time wondering how I was going to get everything to match up on Rudy's face, because you can't glue everything down until you actually got it in there. Now these eyes, they go in really tight on that piece. See, here's the other one. They go into that little hole, and there's that little bump on the top that connects in here. And I'm not even sure how the eyes turned on this originally, because this thing is so tight. I don't know how you're supposed to get it in there. So I'm going to just glue his eyes in. But see here, you can kind of see how his eyes will open and close. That's very cool. Now these pieces back here are for his mouth. So good thing I didn't cut these off. I was going to cut those off like I mentioned earlier, so it's a good thing I left them on there. This just kind of fits on like this. All right, so now you got this going on. Looks a little creepy, doesn't it? All right, and then here's his face. So this whole thing, now I don't have the brackets and the hardware to fit everything on here proper, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to get this on here just right. But now you can kind of see his face, and it's kind of hard to do all this with the camera right in front of me here, but you can kind of see how his mouth. So I'll have to figure out exactly where this was mounted, and see how his mouth would move like that. So on the side of his face here is that hole, and I do know, just from looking at the way everything fits, that it was probably screwed in right on this little lug right here. So it would kind of go like this. And then the back part of the head, which is over here, is going to go, I really hate how thin this is. I always have to be really careful. Let's see, that I think that one connected to this lug right here. But I'm not sure what kind of hardware they used to put that on. And as you can see here, let me put his face back on. There's quite a bit of gap in between. See, there's a lot of gap in here. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get that to go. So I think what I'll do is in this space down here, between his face and this part, I'm just going to put some, let me turn this around. I don't want to scratch anything after all that work I put into the paint job. I'll probably just layer some foam board down here, just little pieces of it, and then that'll act as spacers. I'll just hot glue it onto his face and then hot glue it onto the frame, and then that'll hold this in. That way I don't have to figure out what screws they used or use a bunch of washers. They probably had some kind of spacers in there. There's another bracket that ran across the bottom of his eyes. You can kind of see where they were attached right here. So yeah, I'm just going to have to kind of, mess around with this. But I'm going to see if I can at least get his eyes to open and close. But all right, well, at least I got the metal frame now, and that'll kind of make it a little easier aligning all of his parts. Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that to work. Okay, here he is, all finished. Oh, look how good he turned out. I love it. I love it. There he is, Rudy. Oh man, I don't know why I wanted one of these for so long. Ever since I started playing that game when it first came out, I was like, oh, that Rudy face is so neat. The pinballs were starting to get really advanced back then. They were making all these fancy ramps and different little tunnels they could go down. Some of them had 2 levels where you could play in another level. You could see through the play floor, like the play field, and it had a clear piece of like plastic, and you would play another game underneath it, and it had flippers going the opposite direction. I can't remember what pinball that was. That was really a fun one too. There was a lot of really great ones. I mean, there was like Firepower, a Gorgon, Adam's Family. Adam's Family was cool because it had the thing hand in it. That was really neat. A lot of them had really cool gimmicks like this, and I don't know. Every pinball was always an adventure to play, but Funhouse was always my favorite, and that's because this little guy right here, Rudy. Rudy was just so fun. So everything went together really good. I'm really glad I went ahead and bought that metal base or this metal piece in here. That made things a whole lot easier. And, I just kind of glued it to this base. Now, the reason I had to make this base is because I do have the wire coming out from down below to make his eyelids open and close. I'll show you how that works here in just a second. It's very, very just rinky-dink the way the whole thing went together. I went ahead and decided to leave the mouth loose. I just made this little piece of... it's all foam board, just layered foam board right here. But I made it so that you can open his mouth like this, and so you can just open and close it. I just thought it was kind of cool. I'll get some close-ups in here. There's a little bar in here I'll show you that keeps the jaw from dropping any lower than this. I wanted it to stop right there because in the game, that's as far open as his mouth would open, and you'd knock the ball in there. So you got his little mouth open. And I did put some foam board in between here, between the metal frame and his face, since there was that gap. It ended up taking like 2 layers, and if it was a little thick, the good thing about foam board is you can kind of smoosh it, and then you can get the right thickness, and it worked out really good. It just kind of put some spacers in here to really make that a whole lot better the way it fit. There's a big piece of foam board I put back here to reinforce this because that was so thin, it was really bothering me, and I thought, one of these days I'm going to accidentally grab it and I'll crack this or something. And, everything's kind of glued together now, so you can't really take it apart. So I went ahead and reinforced that. And there's some more foam board in this area too. There's a little bit of a gap in here, but that's fine because if you look at the game, Rudy had a gap there because, it wasn't supposed to look perfect or anything. I did match up the sideburns. I didn't paint this one all the way down quite all the way, so I just went ahead and touched it up and made that so that it's even. And then he just looks so cool. And then same with this side too. Yeah, so the back of his head is flat because, as I mentioned, his head was up against something here. I can't remember what it was. It might have been a ramp or just some kind of framework to the game. And you never really got a chance to see that much behind here because this thing was like right up against it. I think you could see a little bit of it. In fact, I had to ask my friend who has the Funhouse game if he could take a picture of the back of his Rudy's head. He had temporarily had the face taken off because I think he was working on the inside. But it's very cool. So let me put this back on. Well, actually, here, let me show you some close-ups of this real quick. All right, so let's look at his eyes real quick. I really like the way his eyes turned out. Painting the inside of those, I think it kind of gave it a certain look. I mean, because they're shiny. So it didn't affect the shininess of the plastic that they used to make his eyes, but having it painted on the inside just kind of makes it look more uniform and everything. And then there's the little lines on his little crow's feet there, his little Nike swoosh eyebrows. There's his face. So yeah, he kind of looks like a ventriloquist dummy. Remember the ventriloquist? If you ever saw that it was Anthony Hopkins, I think that was in it, called Magic. It was an old movie from I think the 80s, and it was a weird movie. It was about this ventriloquist, and he had this dummy. Gosh, I can't remember his name. Maybe you guys can comment in the comments if you saw it. In fact, I'd kind of like to rewatch that movie. It's been a long time, but the whole time I was building this, it kind of reminded me of him. And then here's the side. I don't know if you can kind of see in there, but you might be able to see. No, it's kind of tight. I was hoping you could see maybe a little bit. Well, you might be able to see it down here, but there's that foam board that I used to reinforce it. That's the frame right there. I just hot glued it to this base. The base is just made of foam board. Foam board is such a wonderful material. You can cut it really easy. The hair turned out really good considering I hand painted all of this. So I was going to use I was thinking about, using a spray can, but that would have been hard to get that just right. But here's the other side. All right, so let me show you how his eyes open and close. Okay, so now let me see if I can lift him. So, he's got a little bit of weight to him. He's not like super heavy. Hopefully I'll be in camera here because I can't see. But on the bottom, I just kind of want to show you, this is what it is. So the reason I was going to use a wood a base that you can find at Hobby Lobby and stuff. They're usually like little plaques, but I wanted to cut this easily, and so I just made a hole for this wire. This is the wire that operates Rudy's eyelids. So let me see if I can hold this. And it's not the easiest thing. It's kind of an awkward thing to hold here. All right, so if I raise and lower this wire that's under here, you can make his eyes close and open. So you can just kind of close it all the way like that. So in the game, when you hit the clock, he kept saying, stay away from the clock, because he didn't want you to hit the clock. And then he'd just go, and he'd get like tired, and then he'd have his eyes closed kind of slowly like that. And then he'd start to snore. I think he started to snore. And then that's when his mouth would go open, and you'd try to get multi-ball by knocking the ball in there. And then you'd have 3 balls come out at the same time. And of course, all kinds of panic would ensue. And I think he's, yelling at you the whole time, and it's really neat. But I'm glad I was able to get his eyes to open and close because it just kind of makes it a little cooler. I wish I could have made his eyes move like side to side, because as you played the game, his eyes would move back and forth, and he'd kind of like watch the ball. It was really neat. I think certain targets would activate it so he knew which side to look. It was pretty advanced, but yeah, I like it. So originally, when I put the front of his face together, I did something wrong, and I got the spacing all messed up, so I had to take everything apart and start over again. But I like it. I'm glad I was able to get his eyes to work, so that's very cool. All right, well, there he is, Rudy from Funhouse. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's kind of an off-the-wall thing to show, but I don't know. I knew this was going to be a fun little project. It's kind of a personal thing, I guess. But if you ever get a chance to play Funhouse, if you can find it in an arcade or a bar somewhere, you got to try it. You got to play it. You're going to get addicted because it's a fun game, and you're going to love little Rudy here. Some people thinks that he was a little cocky, or you know, he could kind of heckle you a little bit during the game. But he really made this game come to life, and it was really fun to put this together. I've always wanted a Rudy head, and little did I know that you could finally get it put together. And I'm glad that I ended up buying the pieces from Planetary Plastics for the head, because if you try to buy like these things on eBay, like I mentioned, it's so expensive. So for $68, I got both the front and the back piece of his head, and just work a little magic with some paint on there, and you can make him come to life. Looks very cool. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'd very much appreciate it. And until the next time, I will see you on the next video. So, hey, Bunky, thanks for watching. Have a good one.